Students, in our last lesson, we have learnt about population, the various trends, the growth rate of population, and so on. As we begin this interesting class today, let us also try exploring another new aspect, people and settlement, in today's journey of geography. Firstly, let me ask you, imagine standing on the terrace of your house and looking around. What do you see?
Yes, you see lots of houses, buildings, roads, grounds and so on. You will also see that the roads, buildings, houses are organized in some or the other way.
So that gives you the answer for what a settlement is.
Settlement is the way that we organize ourselves and the places that we live in. In other words, settlement is the way how we organize us and our geographic space around us. The settlements also consists of various kinds of activities, which include education, commercial and religious, etc.
So, in today's class, let us find out the various aspects of human settlements around the world. Students, before we find out about the existing settlements, let us first ask ourselves, how did the settlements actually begin?
As we all know, the early man in the ancient days hunted for food. This is the reason why they are called hunter-gatherers. The early people were nomads who moved from place to the other in search of food. Gradually, the people began to make and use tools with stone. This helped them in hunting. The humans lived almost for 1 lakh years as hunter-gatherers.
As we have studied in earlier classes, they did not know agriculture. Only around 10,000 years ago, the people took to agriculture, which brought in many changes in the way of life of the people.
Once they have begun to practice agriculture, they did not have to move from one place to the other. They began to become sedentary, which means to stay at one place because of agriculture.
Gradually, as agriculture developed, the people began to observe and predict the seasonal changes, climatic conditions, and so on. As a result, they could progress regarding the crop practices, crop seasons, etc. In addition, the people also began predictions about the heavenly bodies and so on. Eventually, there began an increase in the population.
As the population rose, different people began to take up different professions like weaving, pot making and metalwork and so on. This in turn led an increase in the goods produced by the people. The goods were sold in markets and trade was carried out.
In addition, the encouragement from kings and rulers to settle in urban areas marked the beginning of urban settlements. People were experts in different skills and the goods were produced and sold to traders who took them to distant places. As the settlements began to expand, complexities also increased. In addition to food production, there were many other functions that people had to perform. Students, now let us see an interesting section on how the settlements eventually change.
The city of Delhi served as a center for many empires which ruled our country. During the time of independence, Delhi remained the capital of the country. We also know about the partition of the country during independence, which resulted in mass migration both from the country and into the country.
One of the important challenges of this happening was the accommodation of the new population or the immigrants and settlement of them in new areas. As years passed, the capital city became home to many more people from various parts of the country that migrated there for jobs and to make a living.
With parliament and many central government offices that are based in the capital city, it eventually became home to people from all over the country. As the second largest city and with more than 1 crore 60 lakh population, the city of Delhi has grown 8 times than what it was 60 years ago. The population of Delhi was close to 20 lakh in the year 1951.
We can see that the increase in the population is mainly a result of migration. Going back to the concept of settlement, this was how the composition of the population of Delhi changed over time and hence brought in changes in the aspect of settlement. Going deeper, let us have a look at the kind of areas in which people live in Delhi.
Let us have a look at the data of the year 2000, which points out a similar settlement pattern that is prevalent now.
According to the data, there are different types of slum areas or the areas where the poor people lived, which began as unauthorized colonies in the city of Delhi. A little later, some of the areas were regularized and were accepted by the local authorities as valid settlements, which have become designated slum areas or resettlement colonies or regularized unauthorized colonies. The other areas, however, continue without legal acceptance as settlements like the Jaggi Jhopdi clusters and unauthorized colonies.
From this table, we can see that only 23.7% of the population was living in colonies with a proper legal status.
Students, just like how there is a master plan for a house to be constructed, there is a master plan for every city that designs and allocated different types of areas.
According to the master plan, there should be housing areas, parks, schools, industrial areas, recreational areas, and so on. Based on this information, the planners decide on the types of roads, water and electricity, ways of waste disposal, and so on. Delhi too had 3 such master plans.
But taking into consideration the scenario we have seen about Delhi, it seems that there is no proper implementation of the plans. In other words, we can say that there is an unplanned growth in Delhi. But taking into consideration the scenario we have seen about Delhi, it seems that there is no proper implementation of the plans. In other words, we can say that there is an unplanned growth in Delhi. If a colony is built according to the plan, then it would have all the facilities. The government would announce those areas that are marked separately for various purposes. Also, all the constructions will follow the orders given. But in the case of Delhi, it did not happen.
While we can see that there is a rise in the population in the cities, there is also a lot of delay in the planning process and announcing the plans on how the areas should be used. We can also see that the people who migrate to the cities for livelihoods occupy the lands without permission. As a result, they continue to be unauthorized for a long time.
In addition, when the plans are announced, the areas in which these people build their settlements are marked for other purposes. It is in such situations that conflicts arise between people and the government. The people face threats of continuous eviction or being displaced from their place. As the colonies in which these people live are not recognized by the master plans, they are not a part of the plans. The people in such areas provide various kinds of services to the city and are poor. handling the facilities of local governments will be difficult, and this is what that may result in corruption.
Taking the example of Delhi, some areas which have been villages in the past have been taken over by large builders or farmers who have invested money to build houses on their farms.
This may not be in sync with the master plan. In addition, we can also see villages being transforming the houses to make way for large migrant population.
Some of the colonies got the approval too over the years. The city of Delhi continues to be the home of people who depend on traditional livelihoods like rearing buffaloes for milk, pottery, and so on, which are required by the city. One can also see that what were once traditional lands transformed into slums or basics occupied by people who are poor. They would have been areas on the river banks or grazing lands in the past, which are owned by local body. The streets in such areas do not have proper streets or drainage system and are overly populated. In these areas, some of them are officially notified as slums.
In such situations, there are continuous conflicts. Many a time, big builders or the Delhi Development Authority (DDA) would evict the people from the place that they have been living for a long time. The people are given compensation in such times to build a house or for alternative purposes. The compensation many a times is not sufficient for the people to relocate or afford a residence in the planned areas in the city. As a result, students, the people move to another location which may not be notified. This process goes on. Students, this is how the settlements continue to be expanding in an unplanned way. In the next section, let us learn what kinds of places are chosen by the people to settle down.